So it's Misha Saivo Kinchla. I'm Saivo Kinchla, Principal Officer with the Department of Rural and Community Development and Gaeltacht. I'm dealing with the official languages in the public sector unit. And I suppose our first slide here, you've probably seen this before if you've been to any of our information seminars. But this really sets out, I suppose, what we're working towards in our area of work is towards an increasingly bilingual public service. So there's a number of different steps towards achieving that. And we're going to bring you through one specific one today around our recently published action plan for public jobs. So just a couple of housekeeping bits at the start. We are making a recording of the presentation, and all going well, we will have this up on our website shortly thereafter, maybe tomorrow. So you'll be able to access that, and we'll also have a copy of the slides up online as well. And then if you have any questions during the seminar, don't feel free to pop them in the chat function there, and we'll do our best to come to as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. If we don't get to all of them, or if there seems to be specific themes coming through, we will put together an FAQ document and we'll circulate that to everybody after. Also, questions that come in regularly are sometimes people, is it okay to share these with other colleagues who may not be available on the day? And that's absolutely fine. So once we make the recording and the slides and that's available, you're free to share with whoever you think might be interested in the work. And then, of course, you know, sometimes you might go off and have a ponder about some of the stuff we've chatted about today. So if you have any questions after the seminar, please feel free to send them to us here at ato@drcdg.gov.ie. So just to a brief run through, I suppose, of what we'll be covering today. Hopefully a few of you have been to these information seminars before, so I'm not going to go too much into the background element today. There are older information seminars on our website that cover more of kind of where we've been, where we come from, and all of that kind of stuff. But I will give a little brief overview today. Then we'll jump right into the publication of the National Plan and Action Plan, and we'll go through some of the highlights of the action plan and how that might apply to yourselves working in public bodies, and then give a glimpse of, I suppose, work underway. A lot of the actions, you know, obviously we've started work on them already, or the work that have been in train. So just to give you little updates of some of that as we're going through. And then a little bit later on, at about 3:15, colleagues from our own department are going to jump on. Mark Ryan and Madge Jean from our HR department and our comms department or corporate unit, just to discuss a little bit about the journey our own department have been on. Obviously, the Gaeltacht function moved from our old department over to the new department around this time last year, and there's been a lot of great work done in our department to make sure that the department is, you know, essentially has moved from being, you know, functioning in English only to functioning more or less completely bilingually. So they're just going to give a little overview of some of the work that went into that. Unfortunately, there's no magic pill, so I should flag that from the get-go. There is a bit of rolling up the sleeves and getting into it and getting on with it, but they'll be able to give you a bit more about that. So we'll see if we'll see where I am with the presentation. We might take a little break when they come in, and there'll be time for questions, and then I might go back to my own presentation then. So you might be happy of the break from my voice at that stage. So that's it. So just a little bit of background. I suppose we always highlight this at the start. All the work that we're doing is towards, you know, ensuring that the Irish language is, you know, kept as a community language in Gaeltacht areas and is a live and vibrant language. And we're dealing with one specific area there around governmental and institutional language attitudes. And these areas all echo areas that are set out in the 20-year strategy for the Irish language. And then also, you know, give recognition, I suppose, to the Irish language as the first official language of the state in Bunocht here in the Constitution of Ireland. So all of our work ties into that. And then just there as well as mentioned the Gaeltacht Act 2012, which initiated the language planning process. So again, all of the work that we're doing really in the bigger picture, in the grand scheme of things, goes towards trying to increase the use of the language across the country and ties in nicely with the language planning process. So again, I've kind of gone through elements of that in previous information seminars, but just to say, I suppose a lot of the wording around from the language planning process is used within our own legislation as well around Gaeltacht language planning areas, so areas we would typically know as Gaeltacht areas. Then there's also Gaeltacht service towns where people from the Gaeltacht will go to do their business, and then there are Irish language networks as well, where there'll be a strong community of Irish speakers outside of the other two areas as well. So just to briefly go back on that, as a lot of that wording is mentioned in the Act and reflects kind of where we are and what we're trying to do here as well. Again, just to set out, or the Official Languages Act, we've, the original Act 2003, and then we've the amended Act 2021. And there's a number of different mechanisms, I suppose, identified under the Act in which public services might be improved across the public sector. So the first is direct duties, statutory obligations arising from the Act. So, for example, the advertising provision in the last couple of years, that will be an example of a direct duty placed on a public body from the Act itself. There are other duties that arise by regulations. So we also have our 2008 regulations, which look at signage, stationery, and recorded oral announcements as well. And we'll be looking to build on that as well with other key provisions of the Act in the coming period. And then there's also the language standards, which are to come in place of language schemes. I will touch on that a little bit again later on. And then obviously we have the Commissioner Tonga's office, which was established under the Act, which is there to monitor compliance with the Act, but also to provide public bodies with advice around their obligations under the Act. And we've seen a great increase, they've seen a great increase in the level of and the number of pieces of advice sought from them in the last couple of years, which is hugely positive. It's great to see public bodies engage with them. I think sometimes public bodies can be dubious in terms of engaging with them, Commissioner Tonga, but they are there to provide advice as well as other things. And then today's topics, I suppose, to cover are the National Plan for Irish Language Public Services and the accompanying action plan, which we just recently published as well. So there's no harm ever going back over, I suppose, our key objectives of the Act. So I mentioned there we our original, or the Principal Act in 2003, the Amendment Act in 2021 looked to build on, I suppose, the good work that was done on that and to strengthen it. Point number 2 there is the most important, really, in terms of all of our work, is just improving the Irish language customer experience. So we hear often of people, particularly services moving online. The English language services move completely online, and then you go to avail of the Irish language service, and there might be a case of, send an email to this and somebody will send you out a form and then you have to send it out. So we're looking at really marrying those, ensuring that there's parity of esteem between the English and Irish language services, and creating confidence, I suppose, in people with the language to use the services. Because we hear a lot of times, that there aren't a demand for these services, but I know certainly in my own experience, you can get an Irish language service. The quality of the Irish language service can vary a lot, and if you're not getting a good service, you're probably not going to use it. So all of our work is really tied into improving that Irish language customer experience. And then the bottom 2 points, I suppose, are really in support of that work. So in order to provide those services, obviously we have to make sure that we have enough speakers of Irish in the public service. So we have our ambitious recruitment target there for that. And we'll go into that a bit later on. And then we also have dates to be set soon by the Minister around public services and public offices in Gaeltacht areas that they will be provided through Irish. So again, these bottom 2 are really feeding into that customer Irish language customer experience, particularly in Gaeltacht areas. And then just, I suppose, to mention, because a lot of our work and wording and that can sometimes be quite policy based and speaking about, targets and all of that kind of stuff. But really, we should never lose sight of the very human element of all of this work, that we are looking to provide public services through Irish to a wide range of people across in different communities, and particularly vulnerable services to elderly people or to young people who may not be comfortable with Irish with English as their first language, and especially in Gaeltacht areas. So I suppose it's just, we always have to think of why we're doing this and what we're doing it for. And then obviously, you know, the Gael School movement, we all either probably have kids in Gael School or know somebody in a Gael School and all of that. So it's just another element of services to look at, you know, if there's services being provided to a Gael School, are we providing them from through Irish? So that could be anything from sending out inspectors to, you know, the lollipop man or woman. These are all services that are provided. You know, is there a library nearby that children from the Gael School go into? Is there opportunities to further their opportunities to speak the Irish language in the nearby library or and such? So all of this is kind of going towards the bilingual, I suppose, society that we're trying to build, and building on, you know, we're resourcing the Irish language in other ways. So this is just tying in another way to ensure we're getting, I suppose, value for money on that investment as well as everything else. So our national plan for public service, Irish language public services, we published this in October 2024. There is an advisory committee established under the Act for Irish language public services, and it was their primary aim, I suppose, for their initial couple of years was the preparation of this national plan, and there's broad representation on that committee from across the public sector. There was extensive research carried out for this plan. For example, 35,000 people partook in a competency survey, and you probably heard me speaking a little bit about this before. Very positive results overall for that competency survey. So out of that 35,000, 50% said they'd be interested in increasing their Irish language competence. 23% said they'd be interested in working through Irish if given the appropriate supports. In addition to, you know, there was about 5% who said they were either working through Irish already or were ready to work through Irish. So again, a lot, you know, quite positive, a lot of positivity towards the language. And like I said, you know, maybe even a little bit more positive than we thought it would be, which is great. And then we also carried out corporate questionnaires with the kind of corporate teams in a sample of public bodies there as well. And again, that gave some very interesting results. So, you know, it showed out of the 112 or whatever that carried out completed the corporate survey or the corporate questionnaire, it was something like 75% said that they did have Irish language courses available, but only 3% of staff undertook the courses. And then we also, you know, looking back on the competency survey, had 50% of people saying they would be interested in increasing their service. So their skills in the language. So there's probably a mismatch there. You know, we asked the question, you know, the courses might be available, but are people aware that they're available and all of that kind of stuff? So that's what we're trying to delve into a little bit more in the action plan as well. And then January, we published our action plan. So again, this fell to the advisory committee to prepare. And just to mention, I suppose, similar, and you'll see through both plans, they're set out under key major strategic themes. So obviously there's a lot of structure building in terms of the work that we want to do and kind of reimagining some of the processes that we have. Then there's also an emphasis, obviously, on the provision of public services through Irish. Technology is a key piece. We see, you know, there's a lot of quick wins that we can get with technology as things are moving online, if we can ensure that Irish is in there from the get-go in technological advancements. We spoke earlier about the 20% recruitment target. So obviously training and recruitment are going to be a key piece there. And then, you know, the data collection piece. So again, when the corporate questionnaires, it came through quite clearly that, you know, if people come in with Irish, there's not really a record being kept of them at the moment, or if they move or if they get a promotion or whatever. So there's probably a lot more, and we'll speak about that a little bit later on, more we can do around the data collection piece at a public body level. And just to mention, I suppose, that these key themes or strategic themes are in keeping with other government kind of transformational projects, such as better public services and civil service renewal as well. So I suppose I'm just going to bring you through the highlights of that action plan. Obviously, there's a lot of different actions in there. So these are taken out of the executive summary. in the plan, and then I'm going to, not so much for the first one, but as we go through, I'm going to highlight specific actions that are relevant to public bodies that you can start acting on now. But I suppose just with the first one, I wanted to really highlight some of those structures that we're looking to develop in the period ahead. So we have the establishment as feasibility studies to be carried out around the establishment of service hubs or clinics to provide core services in Irish to Gaeltacht communities and possibly Irish speakers outside the Gaeltacht. So what we're really talking about here is that there be kind of coordinated, systematic plan for the provision of Irish services through hubs. So for example, there's a network called the GTech network that Údarás na Gaeltacht have. So we'll be investigating this obviously as part of the feasibility study. But the potential, what we'd see, a potential solution could be that, on a Monday morning from 9 until 1, the Department of Social Protection, for example, come to a hub and provide services as Gaeilge to the Gaeltacht community nearby there. I'm just using that as an example. Obviously, all of this will be teased through the feasibility study, but it would allow for kind of just that coordinated and planned provision of Irish language services, that everyone is confident. The person who's going out to provide the service is confident that they can provide the service. The person coming in from the public is confident that they're going to receive the service. And then that builds up the confidence in other services as Gaeilge as they're being developed and widened and expanded. And a second piece to that is there's going to be a feasibility study around the establishment of public service units to operate through Irish in the Gaeltacht. So for example, in our own department, obviously the Gaeltacht division, we're based in the Firbuch in County Galway, which is in the Gaeltacht. But this will be looking at, other public service units that, obviously we deal primarily with the Irish language and Irish language policy. But this will be to look at other public service units that provide services to the public that could be located to Gaeltacht communities, and that service will be provided bilingually. So obviously we're always talking about, people that provide Irish language services, but these are people who can provide bilingual services. So that these potential units will be somewhere that was relocated to a Gaeltacht area, can bring in, the local Irish language talent in the area if needs be, to work there, and then, provide those services in Irish or bilingually as required. So that again will be teased out in the feasibility study. And then the third big piece there is something that comes to us a lot, is around translation. So we will be looking into the potential for a shared translation service, similar to what they might have in the EU institutions. And what we'd really see here, so I know it's a question that comes to us, we're not necessarily pushing any translation companies out of the market or anything. The volume of work that will be involved in something like that would still require those kind of contracts, but that there will be a central clearing house for that. So that's what we'd ideally be looking at there. And it would just allow for a standardized approach, standardized terminology to be set out for particular things. I mean, I'm sure there's the same sign goes up in different ways in various locations. So we're just allowed to say, if there is like ongoing roadworks or something like that, that is translated in the same way across the board, and that's reflected in the signs that are seen. And then the official languages officers, I'd imagine a lot of you on the call today are the official language officer for your public body. This is, even though it's been in a couple of years, but it is still a newish role, and we really want to support you in that role. So we'll be looking to develop a whole suite of different supports, awareness modules, all of that to support you in your role, and then to help you to support staff in your public body around implementation of the Act. We're going to have a huge emphasis on innovation. So a lot, and we've said this a couple of times, this is the time to try new things. Some things will work, some things won't, but we really, and there's different levels of innovation. There's always low risk, medium risk, high risk innovation. So we're setting up an innovation fund to assist, I suppose, public bodies in that and coming up with those little bits of innovation in terms of service delivery, motivating people, or creating a bilingual positive environment and all of that. And then we're also coming with another carrot, I suppose, around an awards system or awards ceremony to acknowledge or recognise innovation carried out under that innovation fund. So that innovation fund will be we'll be setting that up in the coming months, and we'll obviously keep you in touch about that as that develops. And then we're also keen to have a dedicated network for official language officers, and then other kind of awareness methods such as newsletters and, for example, today, the information seminar. So I suppose just to give a shout out, if anyone is interested and hasn't registered yet, we are running a workshop for official languages officers on the 12th of March. So not this Thursday, the Thursday next week, from 11:15 till 1 o'clock. It's on in the Convention Centre in Dublin. If you haven't registered and you're interested in registering, please reach out to the team ASAP, preferably by the end of today. We're doing the final tallies there. And this is aimed specifically at official languages officers. If you yourself are an official languages officer and can't attend on the day, we just ask if you did want to nominate somebody to come in your place that they are at AP equivalent grade or higher. Yeah, you can get in touch with the team on that. And again, going back to our innovation piece, we want to really flesh out, have a look at what the innovations are, potential innovations are in public bodies. How can the 20% recruitment target support that, I suppose, and then looking into kind of what supports might be required by yourselves to move on, I suppose, with those innovations and the 20% recruitment target. So the second theme then is the provision of public services through Irish. So again, there's a lot of text on this. I'm not going to read through it all or anything like that, but I've just picked out the two ones here. So any of the ones you see with a little arrow is pointing you in the directions, the ones kind of that you can be in your public body be working on now as they're relevant to you, and it just points out where they have their the action number there as well. So if you want to go and have a further read, you can go back to the action plan and find them there. So the first one that I pointed out there is, I suppose, for public bodies to really look at their own capacity to support the implementation of the Act. So a lot of bigger public bodies, you're probably not going to be able to just rely on one person to be overseeing all of this work. So I suppose, is there an internal delivery committee or whatever you want to call it in place at the moment, or is there potential to put that in place to support implementation of the Act? So that's something, particularly the larger public-facing public bodies, you could start looking at now. The second one I pointed out there, again, is maybe not as relevant to all public bodies, but again, going back to that piece of services of a sensitive or vulnerable nature. So, for example, healthcare, policing, social welfare, TUSLA, particularly in Gaeltacht areas, we'd ask if they are relevant to you, that you would look and see how are people coming into those roles at the moment, and is there anything you can do to either attract people who are ready-made with Irish skills to come into those roles, and or is there anything that you can do to support people to come, upskill in the Irish language as they're coming in through those pathways as well. So that's something that could be actioned, I suppose, or you could start to action now if those types of services apply to you. These ones, 2.61, 2.62, 2.71, we're looking to introduce, and there's a lot of words in the sentence, but essentially just a system that can easily identify, a member of the public can easily identify Irish language services that are available, and when someone is available to provide a service as Gaeilge. So I know there's a lot of maybe lanyards out there at the moment, or little badges, or there may be signage for the counter and all of that, and some really good ones out there. We're not saying that there's not, but it would be great to get a coordinated feel for that, so that it doesn't matter what public body somebody walks into, that they know, okay, this person is wearing this lanyard or they're wearing this badge, and I know that means this. And I'm going to show you in a second a little example of that, of where they're using that frequently and widely in Wales. So I'll show you that in a little second. And then 2.75 there is just, I suppose, facilitating feedback from the public on your services. So sometimes there's a tendency maybe to go to Commissioner Tonga with a complaint directly, and we'd like to make sure that public bodies themselves are made aware. So the easier we can make it for the public to share feedback, the better that is. And what specifically or particularly springs to mind here is particularly any digital services or interactive services. generally there might be less Irish language footfall on them, so it's harder to pick out bugs, or and there's always going to be little glitches and bugs and that, but they get ironed out, I suppose, with the higher traffic. When there's a higher traffic demand on them. So we'd like to see, that it's easily facilitated for the public to communicate with the public body if there is some feedback on some of their services, as Gaeilge. And then this last piece here around public procurement processes. We've seen this take shape, I suppose, naturally already with the advertising provision, where a lot of public bodies are choosing to stipulate compliance with the advertising provision as part of procurement process when they go out, on tender for advertising companies and such. And this is obviously, something that could be used a lot more widely, particularly when a third party is being procured for the delivery or design of public services or systems and that. So I suppose the more that this can be embedded in the procurement process, the easier it will be. I'm not saying it's easy from the get-go, but the easier it will be down the line to make sure that these considerations are in. So this is just an example of what I'd mentioned there in terms of that identification system. And this is the one that they have in Wales, for example. And it's just that little speech bubble, the orange one, is available across the board. So that's a standardized symbol, I suppose. So it's something along those lines that we're looking to develop for ourselves. So I suppose that's a piece that DRCDG ourselves are looking at designing, but we will be in touch with you as that's being rolled out. There may be some pilots to be carried out and all of that. So we will keep in touch with you as that's being developed. Technology, I'd mentioned there. Technology is going to be huge. We're particularly interested in the opportunities that are being presented under the Digital Public Services Plan, for example, with a lot of, ambitious targets set there around moving services online and digitalizing services. So there's a lot of opportunities to ensure systems are bilingual by design in those developments. So we just want to make sure that is the case. And I've just noted one particular one there around I suppose just making sure that staff have Irish language proofing tools, as we do in English, and Irish, language interfaces that they're proactively offered them. So, for example, Windows, you can have now, I think it's called an experience, but you can have a lot of it as Gaeilge now. Similarly, on your phone, a lot of phones now, you can have an interface as Gaeilge on your phone. Microsoft Office has Irish language proofing tools and translation tools inbuilt. You might just need to get to activate them, but they are there as part of the package. So there's a lot of stuff out there at the moment that maybe isn't being utilized to its full potential. And on, I think, the next slide or the next one after that, we have actually published a short document on our website around different resources, Irish language resources that are available online, or tools, how to do the Sína Fada, how to activate the Irish language proofing tools in Microsoft Office and that. So there is a QR code a little further on that will highlight that. And then we have established our technical working group as well, and I'll speak a little bit about that in a second. So just to mention here, we have our what's going to be important, I suppose, in the period ahead, and I just want to highlight this, is this concept of active offer. Now, it's mentioned here in the context of technology, but it is something that's going to come through the language standards in terms of, I suppose, proactively offering services as Gaeilge. So, a lot of the time, unless I've had the experience of going into an office and there's a sign, saying Fáilte Gaeilge or whatever, but you don't know specifically, does that person working on the day behind the desk have Irish? You might try it once and then they don't, and then you'd be reluctant to try it again. So this concept of an active offer, where the service is proactively offered as Gaeilge, without the person having to go, and look for it and do some kind of mental gymnastics to figure out if it is available. That's kind of where we're going towards. And then we've also mentioned the public procurement processes there around technology as well. And then the final piece there is around I suppose registering your language choice. So some services, a lot of services on mygovid.ie now, there is a potential to register your language choice when, if you're creating a profile on that. I know profiles aren't necessarily created for all services or anything like that. But I suppose where that is available, we would ask that you would create awareness for the public that you can actually do that. And we are looking to see, there will be a feasibility study carried out to see if there's potential for someone to register their language choice in one place. There obviously are complications with that, and even as we're delving into, public bodies and their different systems within their own remit, there are complications in terms of joining them up. So it is something we'll be keeping under review as we go ahead. But if you do have the option for users to register their language choice on your services, we'd ask that you please publicize this, because a lot of times people don't actually know, and then you're maybe not getting the kudos that you deserve for having that available there. So I'd mentioned there our technical working group, and there's broad representation there from across the public sector. Emphasis obviously on public facing services, and we've been quite active since it was established in October 2025, and obviously, as I mentioned there, a lot of this work we're looking to align it with other digitization work, so that it's not something that sits on its own, as much as possible, that it's done on a planned and phased basis along with other updates on systems and that. So we're working away with them, and those are the QR codes that I've mentioned around getting Irish language resources. So the first page is kind of around what online dictionaries and that are available, and then if you scroll through, it shows you how to do the Sína Fada, how to set up your browser or your Microsoft Office as Gaeilge and all of that kind of stuff. So please feel free to have a look at that. And obviously, as I said, we'll be sharing these slides with you after as well, that you can share further afield if you want. So on to training. Obviously, it's good. This is going to be a massive piece in the period ahead. And I'd mentioned there are a lot of positive stats, and I suppose you probably have seen it out there in the world. There's a lot more interest in the language, and people are interested in picking it up and going back to it. So obviously we're looking to capitalize on that at the moment. So I suppose in terms of training, the big thing that we want to do is to create, I suppose, a safe, supportive place for people to increase their language competence. So, we're working, and it's mentioned there, with the IPA around standardized Irish language courses, and we'll be looking to, expand that offering. But the Irish language courses obviously are one very important piece, but we want to, give a whole package of supports there. So another piece there is the language coach. So a language coach is essentially like a language mentor. And there's a micro-credential being offered in the University of Limerick. I think it's over one semester to become a language coach. And essentially what we mean here is there is a recognized condition, if you want to call it like that, called linguistic anxiety. So particularly if someone has to provide a service through Irish and it's maybe not in their first language, or they're not completely comfortable in it, there is a level of anxiety there. And I think everyone can, recognize a bit of themselves in that. So what the language coach does is really support that person in that role. And it might look different in different roles. So for example, in a hospital setting, based on how they use it in Sweden, that's somebody who maybe shadows the person in their role for the first 2 weeks, and there's kind of ongoing communication. In a more admin role, it might be something that you touch base once or twice a week and speak about your different experiences and that. So it's really just somebody to support you on your language learning journey. And then the other piece that's I'll come to a little later on, but it's not mentioned specifically there, is the Irish Language Network, which we have set up to give people the opportunity to use the Irish language outside of the classroom. And, a lot of this is talking about training and upskilling, but there's obviously a lot of people in the Irish, in the public service already who have, are fluent Irish speakers. And a lot of time they just want to meet other people who are fluent Irish speakers. So that Irish Language Network caters for all levels, from learners up to fluent speakers. I mentioned there we're working with the IPA in terms of increasing the offering of courses there. And then we're also looking at, again, looking at that kind of the immersive experience, a feasibility study on the potential to include residential periods in the Gaeltacht as part of Irish language training courses. Some of you may remember this was something that was offered years ago, and we're looking at how that might be brought back. And then this other one could be very interesting, the secondment program. So, that somebody might have 6 months to go and work in an office with Irish language. So again, they're all things that we're looking at and we're hoping to develop, but we'll keep in touch with you on them as we go on. So continuing on, I suppose if you came away with one thing around training, it will be this first point. So to proactively offer Irish language training courses to employees and to look to remove any barriers to attendance. So I suppose going back to what I said about the corporate questionnaire, there seemed to be courses offered, but whether people were actually knew that they could avail of those courses or not was unclear. So I suppose just to make sure that upskilling, everyone and anyone who wants to upskill in the Irish language should be given that opportunity. And I suppose this piece around removing barriers, and this is something we deal with a lot with the colleagues over in Wales, and they've done a lot of work around, is this working? Is this not working? So, a barrier could be as simple as someone signed up to an Irish language course, but they're still, expected to pick up on emails while they're on the call. We want to give somebody a safe space to undertake their course and to be given the time to undertake that. Another barrier could be, that particularly as you maybe get more senior level or people that aren't in an office scenario, they mightn't be able to commit to sitting down to 11 to 1 every Tuesday. So we have to look at different ways around that. And I know One Learning, the IPA this year for this term have started having 1 or 2 evening sessions as well as part of their offering. So that's quite interesting to us. And then again, coming back more with the carrot, we are looking to set up an annual award ceremony for people who have increased their competence in the language. And the first one of these will be hosted next Thursday, the 12th of March as well, for anyone who has undertaken the Irish language courses from the public service in the last while and have achieved their accreditation on the Common European Framework for Languages. So they're the key bits there. Obviously, we'll be doing a lot of work with the third level sector. So, we are looking to develop different modules, micro credentials, apprenticeships, internships, all of that kind of stuff. So again, we'll keep you in the know as those are being developed and rolled out. And we are convening a sectoral working group with DFERIS to consider how the third level education sector can support the public sector targets. So again, going back to that pathways piece, if you're saying, okay, we have people coming in here, that's where those suggestions could come in handy, that we're marrying up and saying, okay, these are where the public bodies are having, challenges, and can we answer to that through third level education? So that's in train as well. And then we have, there's a number of different policies that the Department of Education are undertaking in relation to the provision of Irish medium education. And obviously the more people come out that feel confident and competent in the language after leaving school, the easier our job gets down the line. So there's a lot of work being done on that with the Department of Education. And I suppose going back to the third level education piece, it came through quite strongly in the last census 2022 that I suppose people's confidence in the language dropped after they left school and they didn't have as much regular contact with the language. So again, with the third level sector, with this work, we want to keep people in touch, in contact with the language as they move on from third level and beyond. And then this last one will definitely be relevant to some of you. So I mentioned there the dates that are to be set for offices and services located in Gaeltacht areas that they will be provided by through Irish. So there is a specific action reference there around building support for public bodies in that transition to have Irish as the working language of public offices, if that is not already the case. So that is something that we will be looking to roll out and work with yourselves on. But again, we'll probably get back to you on that when we're having our information seminar on the dates to be set once we're clearer on that. And then we also kind of, I suppose, in keeping with this, creating the bilingual positive environment in the workplace, we'd be looking at, various awareness campaigns. These can be just on localized level within your organization to encourage the use of Irish in public bodies. And then there may be a need, this is something that we'll be looking at, I suppose, what's your culture like in terms of the Irish language or bilingualism at the moment? Is it positive? Is it negative? Could it be improved? Is there, great use cases that you have that could be shared? So I suppose that's a good place to start, do you need to carry out a culture audit in your organization in terms of the Irish language? And what might that look like to become more bilingual positive, if that's what's required? So we've a couple of things here just to mention. I'd mentioned there the Grace on Gaeilge, the Irish Language Network. They have an upcoming occasion event on next Thursday as well, on the 12th of March. So you can see we're kind of tying in a couple of different things on the 12th of March there in the convention centre. So please feel free and follow them on social media on that. They have a lot of great events. They do 4 major events normally around Dublin in the year. They also have localized events. They do online yoga as Gaeilge, online cooking as Gaeilge. So please feel free to check them out, and they're always very welcoming of any ideas. So if you have an idea yourself, please feel free to get in touch with them. And then obviously we just as of now entered Seachtain na Gaeilge, or is really a half a month Lavi na Gaeilge at this stage. So yeah, be sure to check out their website there, and the scale.ie as well has a lot of different events being run for Seachtain na Gaeilge. The Seachtain na Gaeilge website there as well has a lot of good ideas for if you wanted to host events. So obviously there's, if you want to attend events, but then there's also if you wanted to host events. So there's a lot of great ideas up on the website there. And also I've seen already now a lot of stuff on social media in terms of events. I think the OPW had a calendar of events for taking tours of Gaeilge and that. So I suppose just be curious, keep an eye open on what might be upcoming there. So I'll continue on, and then I think Mark and Madge will be joining us in a few minutes. So I might stop just after this recruitment piece, and we can kind of come back then to finish out this presentation. So the recruitment, I suppose the training, I said it's very important. Recruitment equally important, trying to get people in from the outside with Irish. So this first one here, we'd mentioned around those supports for yourselves as official language officers, and there's mention here around the potential to align the role of official language officer with that of the Irish language officer. Now, obviously, that has to be within the normal recruitment processes and that, so we're not saying everyone necessarily gets an automatic upgrade or that, but there probably is potential to marry those two roles in the period ahead, and ideally the official language officer would have Irish, but that's not a stipulation at the moment, but that's kind of the direction of travel that we would like to go in. And then just making sure that official languages officer is supported within their own role. So whether that's depending on the size of the public body, whether that's a whole team that reports to that official languages officer, or what that looks like, that would have to be assessed, I guess, at the level of your organization. But just in keeping with that piece earlier on around assessing capacity within your organization, this would tie into this in terms of ensuring that the implementation of the Act is supported within the organisation. The next piece there is a question we get a lot, so hopefully it's spelled out a bit clearer in this action plan, is what is competent in the Irish language? And what we say is, and based on advice that we've received, the B2 on the Common European Framework for Reference for Languages is the minimum level that somebody will be comfortable in providing a service through Irish, and that somebody receiving the service would also be comfortable. So it's important for both people, the person providing the service and the person receiving the service, to be comfortable to provide and to receive the service in Irish. Now there is different stipulations here around in most cases, a B2 spoken level would be required. And then depending on the nature of the role, the B2 minimum in written competence may also be required. And then there'd be a small number of exceptions, say in our own office, particularly a more senior level, that C1, which is a higher level, would be required. But in most cases, certainly B2 spoken level would be the requirement. And then depending on the nature of the role, the written competence, maybe a B2 level minimum may be important as well. And then, of course, goes without saying, I suppose, proactive and local recruitment of those competent in the Irish language. So particularly in Gaeltacht areas, if you can reach out as part of publicity for competitions, for example, go out to your Irish language media, go out to Radio na Gaeltacht, go out to Tuairisc.ie or whoever, to really make people aware in the local areas of the opportunities that are there. Now, I'm going to pause for a second because I think we have Mark and Madge with us, and I'll come back to finish out this recruitment piece in a second. I'll just stop sharing my slides. And I think, yeah, we have Mark. So, Mark, I'll let you jump in there. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Sive. Afternoon, everybody. Mark Ryan is my name. I'm Head of Communications and Corporate Strategy here at the department. Sive asked me just to jump on for a couple of minutes and just say a couple of words about how we prepared to move from an organisation that used Irish a little bit and to the bare minimum to an organisation that operates almost completely bilingually now, and how we kind of managed to raise up the bar and get that done in a relatively short space of time. We were told that the Gaeltacht division was joining our department in January of last year when the new government was formed. So we had roughly about 4 to 5 months to get ready for that and get ourselves prepared for that and look at how we were doing that. My team was responsible for managing transfer of functions. So we were drafting the legislation and looking after the the technical sides of it while we were preparing for the Gaeltacht function to come in. But I suppose that process, while we were in that process, it opened up a thought process for us. How are we going to manage this? How are we going to ensure that we fully integrate the Gaeltacht division into the department and they don't end up as a kind of an add-on? We're quite a small department, so we were bringing in anywhere between 70 and 100 staff, so it was a significant increase in headcount for us. Irish was spoken around the department previously. We had an islands unit that operated in Irish, and a number of colleagues in the department that would be fluent in Irish and like to speak it in the workplace. So it wouldn't have been unheard of for us to hear Irish being used around the place, but in general, business was done through English. We had some obligations under the language scheme that we managed to meet, but we were just about meeting our obligations. We weren't ripping up trees in any area there. So I suppose once we knew that the Gaeltacht function was transferring into the department, there was a whole change of mindset around the department about how we approach this. Like I said, we were determined to make sure that Gaeltacht colleagues were fully integrated into the department and not seen as an add-on or somebody who works somewhere else and works in a different language and we don't all work together. It was really important for us to be integrated in together in all aspects. And that was driven from the top. That was an order from the Secretary General. The senior minister came in and took responsibility for Gaeltacht. He didn't delegate that function to a junior minister, as many ministers had done previously. He was the first cabinet minister to hold the post in about 15 years or so, I think. So I can be corrected on that. But he was certainly very passionate about the language and expected everybody to operate accordingly. So instead of seeing it as it was a challenge, but we also saw it as an opportunity for us as an organization to grow hugely and to expand, and as well for people who were already in the organization and had language but didn't have as much of an opportunity to use it, for them to use their language a little bit more. And then for those of us who had decent level of Irish in secondary school to get back to it again and learn a couple of focal, so it was we approached it from a very positive manner from the start. I suppose that's the kind of message I want to get across today. If you don't approach things positively from the very start, it can be very difficult to get this over the line. It feels like you're dragging people to places kicking and screaming, and that's just not where you want to be. I also head up the communications unit, so we would have again had to make significant changes in the communications unit and how we operate considering we would have tried to issue 1 in 5 press releases bilingually previously. We may not have even met that target all the time. Now we were going to go to all press releases, all external communications were going to go out bilingually simultaneously. So there was a lot of work that had to be done, not just in the communications unit, but across the whole corporate division, and how we do our work and how we time our work. We needed to prepare material as early as possible to allow time for translation into Irish, and to allow material to be sent to us in Irish and translated into English so it could be understood. So there's a lot of forwards and backwards translation required, and that takes time. You want that done properly by approved translators, rather than the machine translations are imperfect at the moment. I'm sure that'll improve in the future, but for now you do need it to be done properly by translators and checked by humans. So that takes time. So we had to build that into our procedures. We had to change how we operate as a communications unit and as a press office. We had to increase timelines and request material from units, whether it's speech, briefing, press material. We had to request that from units well in advance of when it would have cried before, because it had to be read, understood, approved, translated, etc. And that all takes time. So there was a lot of buy-in required from our policy and program units so that we could operate bilingually. And we do issue all of our external communications now bilingually. Now a huge part of this as well was that it's not just policies, procedures, it's also people. People are the real key here. Bringing in staff that understand the language. And I know that's what this talk is about today, is about recruitment and bringing in people who understand the language. Having people who have a passion for the language, understand the language, are happy to work in both official languages, because we move between both regularly. That was key for us, identifying the right people, bringing them in, making sure they had experience. From a communications point of view, when we took on Gaeltacht, huge amount of press queries to our department, increased massively. There's a whole media ecosystem out there focused on the Gaeltacht area, and they're not always, how shall I put it, hugely supportive or friendly towards us. So massive amount of work had to be done there to ensure we could handle queries, understand them, prepare responses, get them cleared, get them sent back out again to media deadlines. So a lot of this stuff can happen very quickly and needs to be dealt with quickly. So that was about getting the right people in place. And it took us some time to do that. But once we did, it really worked really well, and we're very happy with how it's working now. We, again, from a communications unit point of view, this has been a win for us. We now have more coverage of what the work that the department is doing. Like I say, not always flattering, or they're not always giving us a round of applause, but we have a whole Gaeltacht media ecosystem out there that we operate with now, and we're familiarizing ourselves with. They're getting to know the journalists, getting to know the particular shows. So again, it's expanded the audience of the department, and that's a job for any communications unit, is to expand its audience. We get huge and very positive engagement through our social media channels in relation to Irish, particularly Instagram. I'm told is by the team goes really, really well. The Irish posts on Instagram. So it's been a bonus for us. It was difficult at the start, but it has been a bonus for us as a unit. It's meant I've been able to expand my team. I've Irish speakers on the team now. I've people on the team willing to use Irish intermittently as well when they can. And everybody's across the issue, so it's really, really important. But the key thing for us was making sure we had the right people, making sure we adjusted our policies and procedures so that we could actually make sure because we are conscious that there's some people who need to approve material in our department. They may not understand the Irish. We have to translate it for them, send it back. So it can slow things down if you allow it to, but it's just about building in, I think, a little bit of future planning. We plan a lot. We try and plan ahead as much as possible on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, so that we have all our ducks in a row and we're ready to go. So when we issue anything now, we issue it simultaneously, bilingually. Irish to the Irish media on top, to English media, English on top, Irish below, and everything is done to the highest standards. We can't afford to issue material out as Gaeilge that is not translated properly, or there's anything missing anywhere. It'll be picked up and noticed, and it'll cause significant problems for the minister. So a lot of time, a lot of planning. Won't say it was all plain sailing. It wasn't. It was a difficult road. We had about 5 minutes to get our act together on it. But I think the positivity that we approached it meant that colleagues like Saib and others coming in from the Gaeltacht division hopefully felt supported by us and were willing to work with us and knew they were going to be an integral part of what we do as a department, and they are. And we're getting there now. You know, we really are. I think we're doing quite a good job now in relation to bilingual external communications and how we operate at a corporate level. Our internal communications that go to all staff are generally bilingual as well. So everything that goes to all staff should be issued bilingually. That's our rules. But Madge, who runs the HR unit, would have more to say on internal communications and how we organised our staff and our people a little better. So I'll hand over to Madge if she's still there. I know she dropped out there. Madge, are you back in?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. It's amazing what happens when you click the wrong button. Yeah, I did go out there for a second. So thanks, everybody. Just a quick few minutes from myself. So I'm the HR manager here in the department. So as Mark said, I suppose we had 5 months to prepare for the transfer last year. And first of all, I suppose we were honoured to be expanding and the government to trust us with the Gaeltacht function. So look, we went into it very positively, as Mark said. The first thing I would say to anybody is there's always this myth out there that Irish speakers are not to be got through public jobs or through anywhere else. They are there, okay? So you just got to plan, allow more time, I suppose, when you're recruiting by Irish speakers, but they are there, okay? So what we done first last year was, I suppose, we had a couple of things to think about. First of all, the department is expanding from 200 staff to, they got to 300 overnight with the transfer. And I suppose first thing is we had to figure out what will the corporate spy look like? How many additional people do we need? And yes, we did need additional people because the department is expanding, but those additional people then needed to be Irish speakers, okay? So you don't know if you need one in finance, one in HR, one in comms, two in finance. So literally you just don't know. So look, I suppose came up with a couple of draft plans, and we went out at phase 1 and phase 2. So phase 1 were people that we needed in immediately, and they had to be in place by the 1st of June. And then phase 2 obviously then was when things settled down and the transfer and the Gaeltacht division was bedded in. They were roles that we started to look at last winter. Okay, so we're still filling one or two ones that are just getting around to, but we're nearly there. Okay. One of the first things, I suppose, just taking a pragmatic approach to is we thinking, well, TJASM or CCS as they are now, well, they have the bilingual corporate spine that we now need. Okay, when the Gaeltacht function was transferring over to us. So we spoke with the HR unit there and got them to issue an expression of interest out to their staff to ask, did anybody want to move over to DRCDG when the transfer happens? Now, as it turns out, we got 3 Irish speakers, but 3 is a small number, but it was actually still very, very helpful to us at the time. So those people went into the likes of the Minister's office, to HR and comms, okay? It's like 3 is still 3. There were still roles that we were absolutely desperate for and happy to get those people over. So one of the things as well that worked really well, I'd say to you, is keep in close contact with PASS and your client relationship manager there if you have one in PASS, because you can't just start recruiting Irish speakers overnight in a silo without telling PASS that you're going to be looking for people. So PASS will, I suppose, were anxious to find out what kind of numbers were we talking. Okay, what locations were we in? So we have Gaeltacht speakers, fully Gaelic speakers in Furbo, Commissioner Chanka's office in Anspidal, and then we have 10 staff in Derrybega and Donegal. So look, that was the first course of action to fill vacancies there, but then it was also to fill bilingual roles in our corpus spine. Okay, so in terms of advice, I suppose that we would be leaving with here today is, I suppose, don't be afraid. Irish speakers are there. You just got to make sure you're tapping into the right recruitment streams, and working with PASS on it. And they're really, really supportive, as many of you probably know. Start small. Don't be going out and say, look, we're going to start with 20 people, the bilingual people that speak English and Irish. Don't start working on 1 or 2, and when you've those recruited, start working on another 1 or 2, because you get overwhelmed by thinking, look, we have to start reaching this target of 20% and we need to do it now and we're under pressure. Start small and build up, okay? What we've done is we've kind of left ourselves, the department now, with kind of three streams of staff. So we've staff that work fully in English. We've about 70 or 80 staff who work fully now in Irish. And then we have a body of bilingual staff, mainly in our corporate spine. So there are people that we've deliberately said, you will be working in HR, finance, comms, coordination, minister's office, but you will be working bilingually, okay? As vacancies arise over the next few years, they will be filled by bilingual staff because that need is there and is always going to be there. And also we don't want to leave ourselves tight with our bilingual numbers. We want to be able to move people around within units as we need them, and for promotion opportunities for themselves as well. Okay. What I'd say to you is, look, yes, sometimes you will be told PASS don't have any more panels. Okay, and that's the situation at the moment we're finding with CO, EO and HO in Irish across many of the regional locations. We're also going out to use the HEO mobility, the advert-based mobility or the target-based mobility. Like that, when you go out and say it's a bilingual role, you need to be able to assess somebody's Irish. So again, we would have a Gaeilgeoir on the interview board, able to meet the candidate and have part of the interview in Irish with them. And I suppose one of the other things as well, you know, that we're starting to tap into more is the people in the department, as Mark said, they already have Irish and they want opportunities to use it. Okay, so we're trying to put a little bit of momentum behind our Irish courses that the IPA and One Learning run, and also the course, you know, where they go to the Gaeltacht for a week. We're really, really supportive of that, and we are in particular as the department with the Gaeltacht function. Okay, but again, you have to be able to come back and use it and put it to good use in your work, is what I would say. It's not as bad as I had anticipated. Actually, I thought there would be a real delay with us in HR issuing bilingual notices to staff and office notices and all those type of things and competitions. There isn't, but that's purposely because we have one person in our team who does a lot of that for us, and he looks after equipment. So we're very lucky we don't have to go to our in-house translators. So that does save time. And as vacancies arise in HR, I will probably fill them again with more bilingual staff because it's really, really helpful. When the division moved over as well last June, from a staff morale perspective, it is really, really helpful and positive that actually we have somebody in HR who is able to interact with staff in Donegal and in Galway, fully capable, competently in English and by phone and email and in meetings in Irish. So look, that's really, really important as well if you can do it. So look, what I would just leave you on the notes is, look, a bit of advice is it's not as scary as you might think. We got through it and we had to, I suppose, scale up very, very quickly, and we had a target date. But the one thing I would say to you is start small. Don't think you're going to get 10 or 20 people overnight from PASS. You're talking ones and twos initially. And then those ones and twos becomes, you know, over a few months, you'll have 9 and 10 and 20 and 30. So it will happen, but it won't happen overnight. It will take a few months or a year or two for this, and especially it depends where your base, what's your baseline as well, where you're starting from. So look, overall, I think it wasn't a big challenge as we had initially thought, because we kept close relationships with PASS and Public Jobs. So look, Mark and myself are very happy to take any questions if anybody has any for us. Or anybody want to put anything in the chat function?
Sorry guys, just there's a question here regarding recruitment. So the insight on the recruitment is very helpful. However, it would appear to be heavily reliant on PASS. That recruitment structure is not available to all public bodies. Has thought or consideration be given to this challenge? Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, well, we're mandated first and foremost to use PASS or Public Jobs. Okay, they are the recruitment arm of the civil service. Okay, and they're able to recruit en masse, and they have panels. Okay, they mightn't have panel every month. They run competitions. The panel exhausted, they have another one planned for a few months' time. Okay, but at the same time, For example, at the moment, they have no panels left for us for Galway for CO, EO, and or HO. Now, the HO I can't obviously recruit externally through our own recruitment license. But what we are planning to do is maybe kind of April, May time, we probably will go out and run our own competitions. Okay, now we've done that last year for a particular role or two. And actually it wasn't a big deal again as we had thought. But we managed all the applications ourselves. Now, I was very lucky we had an Irish speaker on our team who was able to interact with candidates. You cannot be interacting in English with candidates for an Irish role, for a fully Irish role. It has to be completely in Irish, okay? There are options there. So there was another competition we got past to run it, or sorry, to advertise it first. And we managed the recruitment ourselves. We have a license here to do that. For the agencies or for organizations that don't have PASS, I don't know what other methods you use. Is it recruitment agencies or do your own recruitment? But definitely it's something that we were able to do. And look, it's a little bit more work in terms of translating competition booklets and all that kind of stuff. But you would need somebody in HR first and foremost, would be my advice, in order to run an external competition in Irish.
I might just add there, Madge, obviously PASS are great at what they do, but depending, particularly if you're advertiser, running competition more for the local regions, sometimes having a bit more control over it yourself actually can lend itself to the competition and kind of being, able to create momentum and I suppose interest in, in the competition at a local level, so there's probably two sides to that in a way.
Yeah. And there can be this thing as well that, PASS, that they're online and that they don't use papers or any other methods, okay? PASS will take direction from us. They will take direction from yourselves. They will advertise it wherever you want, okay? There's no point in spending, thousands on national newspapers. If a role, for example, our roles are in Derrybeg and Donegal and in Connemara, so then it has to come down to local and regional papers, radio stations, websites, local websites, tourist.ie, punk.ie, peg.ie, all those. And it's actually word of mouth. And believe it or not, it's actually leaving the role open long enough to actually for word to circulate within the community. That's a big thing, and 2 weeks sometimes is not long enough. So what I'd say to you is take control of that as well in terms of how long the role is open. But you've got to be smart as normal, like not to be having it open around school holidays, Easter break, summer, all that kind of stuff. So avoid July and August. There's no point going out with any ads, Irish or English. That's what the rule of thumb we follow here in the department. But look, I mean, I'm happy to take a call, or anybody who wants to follow me separately out of this, I'm happy to have a call and support colleagues across the public and civil service as needed on this, because you can waste a lot of time going down an avenue that doesn't sit. So look, I'm happy to help anything at all I can do from what we've learned last year. Okay.
That's very helpful. Gurmila Mogat, Madge. I didn't see any other specific questions for you, but thanks a million. It's very, very insightful, and just good to get a handle on some of the practical experience there, and the rolling up the sleeves part that you both did and the department did, but has really paid off, so that's brilliant. Gurmila
I'm happy for you to share my email, Sive, if you want. Okay.
Great. Gurmila Mogat, thanks, Madge.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Slán, thanks, guys.
Slanish, bye. Bye-bye.
Now, I will just share my screen again. Obviously, if there are any other thoughts on what Madge or Mark shared there, feel free to pop it in the chat as we're going on. Now, you had a bit of a break from my sorry, I went back to the start there. My voice, it's nice to get a different voice in there as well. So let's get back to where we were. Yeah, I think this was it. Yeah, so I think we're just going on to this piece here. So yeah, I might just continue with the recruitment then. So there's one piece here, just to, I suppose, to specifically mention, we will be going out with a large-scale national awareness campaign around Irish language employment opportunities in the public sector in September, October of this year. So if you do have any upcoming competitions for Irish language, or you want to get people in with Irish language, please get in touch with us. The more, obviously, we can align with that, and we want to really strong call to action piece that we're creating awareness around these opportunities, but we want to make sure that there's a place for people to land, and there's a good few competitions live at the time. So yeah, please get in touch if you are planning on having any competitions that involve Irish language skills around September, October. We'd love to hear from you, just to see if that can, if we can coordinate some of that work. We will be doing this on a regular basis, so if it doesn't work out for this year, please keep in touch with us for next year as well. And we'll look to build on that in the coming years. And then another piece is around, I suppose, again, an awareness really is coming through all of these modules: internal awareness, external awareness, and all of that. So we are looking to run career fairs and discussional panels for young people on the Irish language opportunities as well. And I'll come to in a second. There is a brand new conference being run on the 12th of March in the Convention Centre. That's why we're tying a few things together around there for young people about the opportunities with Irish. So I'll share some more details on that in a second. And then this one, 4310, is interesting, if you want to call it that. So in terms of a lot of public bodies, they go out, they publicise their employment opportunities, they publicise their services. So we want to make sure, as part of that, not as a separate piece, but as inbuilt into that publicising of those services and opportunities, that the Irish language is built in a part of that publicity. So a simple example here I give is a pop-up. A lot of times you go and there might be restrictions on what kind of pop-ups or pull-ups that you can have. If that's in English only, then you're already limiting yourself to the information that you can put across. So we'd advise, if there are pop-ups for promoting your services or employment opportunities, that these will be bilingual, and ideally highlight the Irish language element of that. And then similarly for public bodies that offer education or training courses, if you're publicising those training courses or education courses, that they would also highlight the Irish language opportunities there as well. We are looking at standardised providing training for people to sit on interview boards. This is something that we come across often enough. So that's kind of an ongoing piece for ourselves, and we will keep you informed if and when a list of qualified people to sit on boards, Os Gaeilge, is published. We will also, and we're always welcome, I think we'd said beforehand, to send on your queries around the 20% or recruitment practice, but please feel free to send these on, because we will be through the Irish Language Services Advisory Committee doing a best practice paper there around recruitment practices and that. So I know a couple of questions came in there that could be worthwhile, so we will be hoping to answer them in I suppose a larger scope or wider scope best practice paper there around recruitment. 453 there, just I know there was a number of queries that come to deeper on that one specifically. So here we're saying all recruitment competitions to be advertised bilingually or in Irish, and a lot of that is happening already because it's counted towards the advertising provision, depending on what's involved. And then there's a second piece of that in terms of, if you are looking for somebody with Irish for that role, then obviously the accompanying documentation, so the application form and the information booklet, should also be in Irish. So making sure that your links, if you're advertising Os Gaeilge, that it links through to the Irish language documentation as well. So just that continuity piece there. And then around, I suppose, people with Irish, so similar to what they have in Wales, when you are looking to backfill or to fill a position, there's normally a form that most public bodies would have to send on to HR, and we'd be asking that now that form would include whether Irish is essential for the role, desirable, whether Irish could be learnt in post, or that there's no Irish language requirement at present. Now we've noted there that the latter shouldn't really be used. We wouldn't see any role that you wouldn't necessarily need Irish for, but that's taken from the model that they have in Wales there. So what we're talking about there will be roles, for example, coming into our unit, our section, that you would need just to be able to be comfortable and confident in the role, be able to perform the functions of the role. You'd have to have a good level of Irish, a B2 level or higher. Other roles, maybe what Madge was saying there, they may be, in the corporate spine, maybe more that, that the Irish, you would have a level of Irish coming in, but that you could also perfect your, if given the appropriate supports, you could come up to a certain level within a certain time frame. So that's what we're looking at with the Irish learned in post, and then Irish desirable again. So I think the more we can get that embedded in, it starts just to focus in and plan, and helps with that piece that Madge mentioned about ensuring that PASS, if you use PASS, are informed of the demand, because we've had it a couple of times where, we look to set up a HEO comms competition, and ultimately PASS said, we haven't had any requests for this, even though everyone we spoke to in the comms units said, hey, this is a great idea. So there was something that wasn't getting through to PASS there in terms of that this demand was actually there. So just to highlight that. And I think I've covered off this piece, but just to mention, there was more to that 4.53. So advertising bilingually or in Irish, but if Irish is required or desired for the role, that all the relevant documentation should also be provided bilingually or in Irish. So this is that Fish Fihe, the new conference that's been organised. So we fund Glúiseacht, which is an initiative of Conradh na Gaeilge that goes out into schools to raise awareness around Irish language opportunities. And this is the first year we're organising this conference in the Convention Centre in Dublin on the 12th of March. So I think the stands are full now, but that is their email address. I think a lot of your public bodies may be represented already. But again, this is something that we hope to run on an annual basis. So if you haven't been in the game this year or not in the game this year, that there is potential for next year. But it's an important piece to meet, I suppose, future recruits and future people hopefully coming in to work in public bodies, but also a chance to create confidence in the provision of services through Irish. So if you have, good quality service, get the kudos and go and show them off at that conference. So they're the contact details there, but it's probably more or less sewn up for this year, but please do reach out to them. There may still be a potential there to be included if that's something you'd like, and then probably next year we'll highlight it again, but it could be of interest to your comms units as well, that piece. So the last piece from the action plan is this piece around data collection. I'd mentioned at the start that this is, quite important for us to kind of nail this down. And I just wanted to highlight two specific pieces in this. One is around application forms. So we're asking now that all application forms would have these 4 questions in it. One, what is the person's self-assessed level of competence in the Irish language in accordance with the CEF4, the Common European Framework for Languages? What would they be interested in working through Irish? So obviously not all people who have Irish may or may not necessarily be interested in working through Irish. And then equally, somebody may have a lower level of Irish, but also be interested in working through Irish with given the proper supports. So to capture that information when people are coming in, interest in increasing the competence in the language, if appropriate. So obviously if they're already at a high enough language, they may not necessarily be interested in increasing it any further, but obviously if appropriate or necessary. And then the final one there is around if they have undertaken any Irish language courses or accreditation previous to that. So again, that might help with if they've already done a Tastas Orpach na Gaeilge, which is accreditation in line with the CEF4, that, if that's noted on their application form, well then, that might ease if you do want to undertake an Irish language assessment. It may not be required then if they already have done the TEG as part of their course. And for example, One Learning, the IPA courses now, the Tastas Orpach na Gaeilge are accrediting those courses, or part accrediting them. They're accrediting the oral piece at the moment. So it'd be important to capture those information and might help to, to save on any double of work involved there. And then the second piece there that we want everyone to start including, so the official languages officers have an obligation or duty under the Act to report on activities under the Act, I suppose, in their annual reports. So these two things we definitely want to see in your annual reports for, say, from this time next year, reporting for 2026. So just to be, this isn't, say, in this year's annual report, it's for this year reporting next year on this year, if that makes sense. So the second piece on that is to include recruitment figures. And here you'll see we've broken down. So we want the overall figures, I suppose, of people recruited and newly appointed. So there will be emphasis on people recruited newly into the organisation, but also those newly appointed within. And I'll speak a little bit more to that. So I suppose just, to have that breakdown in your annual reports of how many have been recruited, how many were promoted or newly appointed, and then how many of them had Irish, and that's clearly detailed in your annual reports. There were a number of requests when we were going out with the action plan around reporting requirements. So we are looking to develop a template, and of course we'll issue that to you around what the reporting requirements under the Act are. So those are those key pieces. There's a lot of text on this slide, but just I suppose on the role of the Official Languages Officer, just to reiterate, this is a senior official AP equivalent or higher who's appointed to oversee the implementation of the Act. Every public body should have one under the Act. They do have duties to report in their annual report, as I mentioned there. We do ask that the Official Languages Officer has a joint email address, so ATO at the name of the public body.ie, or that, because we understand people move on from roles, we're not always necessarily kept up to date. So the more that there is kind of a shared email address that we can contact and that has continuity, the better it is, and the more your public body will be kept up to date on updates. What we're doing around this role, I think I mentioned there, a lot of work around ensuring that there's appropriate supports, training, recognition for that role, and then I suppose to make sure that if you are the Official Languages Officer, that you're obviously firstly doing points 1 to 3 there under context, but then also making sure that the book doesn't stop with you, that the information that we're sending is going up, down, over and back as appropriate in the organisation, and then also partake, we have that workshop, actively partake in different bits that we're running to try and help you and support you in that role. I think there was 1 or 2 questions in the chat there around other items to come. So we have our ministerial guidelines around 9A to 9D, and thanks for anyone who had partook in, we had consultations on them with government departments and through the advisory committee and the technical working group. So we've quite extensive consultation done on those ministerial, and we've also looked into accessibility issues as well, or matters, to make sure that everything's above board there. So long story short, we're hoping to publish those before the end of the month, and once they're published we will hold another information seminar to go through what's involved in them. Similarly, for the dates to be set for Gaeltacht offices and services, we hope that this will be announced soon, and we will hold an information seminar around them as well. We're also busy updating the list of public bodies that come under the Act, and then the next, I suppose, big ticket item is the language standards. So the language standards are to come in place of language schemes. It's based on a system successfully in use in Wales, and obviously work has been ongoing on the drafting of those language standards since the enactment of the Amendment Act, and there are a number of items mentioned in the action plan for prescription through language standards, and also to support public bodies in the implementation of those language standards. So we're hoping to initiate consultation on those language standards in the next couple of weeks before the end of the month. We'll be initially going out through the advisory committee, and then there's also consultation with government departments, and then there will be, as the last piece, consultation with public bodies and with the public itself. So we'll be in touch with you again, but that will be certainly happening before the summer. So again, once we're going out for that public consultation or the consultation with public bodies more widely, we will have another information seminar on that as well. And once that's initiated, public bodies will have 3 months, and the public will have 3 months to come back on the language standards. So we'll keep you up to date on that, but the time is nigh, I suppose, just to mention on that, is coming on them. The 20% recruitment target, I think I've covered kind of most of this. Just, I suppose, to mention that, you know, ideally we were, the whole point of this is to get enough people in with Irish into the public sector, and that is we understand that there kind of might be challenges to that, as Madge said there. You just kind of have to roll up your sleeves, and you know, the initial couple of percent will be getting the structures in place, will be possibly the kind of the more challenging piece. And once you get those proper structures in place, hopefully it'll start to ease after that. But there would be a level of priority, I suppose, in terms of where we would see those roles with the 20%. So obviously high level of interaction with the public on telephone, help desk, reception services, counter services, face-to-face. I'd mentioned earlier vulnerable services to elderly and children, and services in the Gaeltacht. So I suppose when you're planning for that, just to make sure that, you know, obviously great if you get them into other roles, but as a priority, I suppose that's where we'd be looking to get people into. And I suppose just to mention on the 20% and echoing maybe what Madge said there, I think, you know, the 20% when you look at it on the whole seems quite challenging and, you know, scary. But if you start to really break down in your public body, okay, how many people did we actually recruit last year? What's 20% of that? Okay, 10 of them are already doing, 10 of our staff are already doing Irish language courses. So that could be, you know, if they get promotion, that could be 10. And then you have your other 10 that you have to get in from the outside. So obviously there's greater numbers and bigger public bodies. But if you start looking at it in terms of what it actually means for your public body, it may not seem as scary. And then just to mention that internal promotions piece. So there's obviously the recruitment in, but you have the most control over your own staff and providing opportunities, upskilling opportunities. So we're very keen for the internal promotions to be included in the 20% recruitment target, and we're aware there may be a potential legislative clarification required for that. So that is something we're very keen on ensuring, that both recruitment in and then promotion within public bodies will be included in that. And I'd spoken about the B2 there. So if you're not sick of listening to me yet, we are running, well, it's with the IPA and Gaelchulter, who do the Irish language courses. They're running a seminar and we're partaking around opportunities with Irish in the public sector, around kind of employment opportunities. As far as I know, anyone can access that on the One Learning site. You don't have to log in, but the links are also there as well, and you can register there. So we might see a couple of you along at that one as well. So finally, key takeaways, I suppose recruitment, proactive recruitment, and that's kind of speaks to what Madge was saying there. B2 level, ideally for if you want somebody to be kind of good to go when they come in to provide the services. Look at proactively offering Irish courses without barriers. Ensure that staff have Irish language support tools, proofing tools, translation tools. And just to mention, Microsoft Translation is built into the Microsoft Office. You know, I think I'd mentioned that it's not 100%, but it definitely is good to get a sense of your email or whatever, you know, the key messages from something. So it is certainly a useful tool, but maybe not for the finished product necessarily. Ensure that Irish language is embedded in technological developments, and again, we mentioned there particularly interested in any developments that are happening under the Digital Public Services Plan and the Life Wallet. Emphasis on innovation. You know, you can start small, big, medium, large, and we will be hopefully there to support you, and we'll be looking to explore some of those ideas through the upcoming workshop with official languages officers. Awareness has come through all threads there, awareness among staff, awareness in the public, all of that. And as our services, I suppose, improve, as our structures improve and develop, we'll be looking to create more and more awareness around that. We're looking to develop a suite of reports, and then the reporting, particularly around recruitment and Irish language competence there. And we will be coming back with a template on that. But obviously you can be cracking on, as they say, with that in the meantime. Those are the key things there. So Sinna Bhfuil Weimse, Muile Buchas, thanks a million. That's our website there, and we're always available to be contacted at that email address as well, ato@drcdg.gov.ie. We will get these slides out to you and the recordings once we've the recording, so it may be tomorrow before we do that. And I will stop sharing my screen as Mata Question. If anyone has any questions, you're very welcome. Mary Ellen, I might get you to shout out any questions that I haven't covered off in the presentation so far.
So yes, so there is a few questions after coming in here. So there's ones in particular regarding the language standards. So the first one is there a confirmed time frame for the language standards being published? I know this was a topic at the JOC appearance a few weeks ago. It would be helpful to have them in hand to assist with prioritization of activities under the action plan. Is there a publication date for the guidelines for IT systems?
Yeah, so I think I covered them off. So the guidelines, we're hoping before the end of the month, and we'll run another information seminar on that. And the language standards, we're hoping to get out into the initial consultation with the advisory committee before the end of the month as well.
Thank you. Then the next one, sorry, it's to do with annual reporting requirements. So when is the annual reporting requirements effective from?
So they're reporting on this year. So when you're reporting on 2026 this time next year, it will be for 2026. So we're not looking back at 2025. It'll be gathering the information during this year to report on in your annual report for 2026.
Okay. So this one is kind of for HR recruitment, but are there HR recruitment actions and asks to be specifically communicated to the heads of HR across the civil service?
I know DEPR have issued some guidance, and this, if there's particular areas there that are being flagged, or it's something we can keep under review. We're meeting with, we have a sub recruitment committee as well with DEPR and public jobs, so that's something that we can look at. If there was any particular areas that were noted today that you felt would be helpful to receive further guidance on, please let us know.
Just a few more questions. So regarding the action plan and reporting requirements, what date/month will the template be available?
As soon as possible. We're working on it at the moment, and we'll communicate that as soon as it's available. But I think the last slide there sets out clearly enough around those specific things around recruitment. So could be working away on that, but yeah, we'll certainly let you know as soon as the template itself is. It'll be probably more like a checklist, I suppose, and just to make sure that you can be ticking off saying, okay, we're reporting on this. But yeah,
brilliant. So another one here, the breakdown, for the annual report for Irish speakers is not retrospectively accounted for, i.e. is there only focusing on new staff hired, not the development of staff or those with a good level of Irish already currently working in the businesses?
I think that can be captured. Obviously the 20% recruitment target is focused on, I suppose, appointments, as we might call them. So from recruits in and people being promoted on appointments, but absolutely it's worth including, and that's probably something that will come through the template. If people are undertaking courses or already have a good level of Irish, that's something that would be definitely worth capturing as well. It's just not specifically mentioned there for that, but that's not something we'd want to miss out on. So we'll give thought to that in the template as well.
Perfect. And then just the last two here, I can see, does each public body have a requirement to have 20% of their employees competent in the Irish language?
Yeah, at the moment that's because the monitoring will be carried out on Commissioner Tonga, and it will most likely be done by through the annual report. So that annual reporting that we're looking to set up now at the end of 2030, or by some if we manage to meet it before 2030, but yeah, it'll be monitoring by Commissioner Tonga on public bodies' annual reports.
And just the final one here, again, 20% recruitment. So is there 20% a target for the workforce, or specifically recruitment/promotion activity?
Specifically recruitment and promotion activity, yeah. So
Perfect.
obviously the whole point of the 20% is to increase the overall, I suppose, objective of it is to increase the workforce competent in Irish. But I suppose the measurable piece under the Act at the moment is the recruitment and appointments piece.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all.
Sinead, okay. All right, Gurmila Magav, thanks very much, everyone. Again, if you've any questions, feel free to send them in to us at the email address, and we'll share the slides and the recording as soon as we have it. And we'll probably be meeting again shortly. I'd mentioned those other information seminars coming up, so you probably be sick of looking at me and hearing from me in the next couple of months. But we leave it there for now. Gurmila Magav, Slán.